After months of teasing by Bill Henniger and long lead times, it's finally here. When I first started seeing this bar months ago, I was so excited. This thing had me more worked up and frustrated than back when I was a virgin teenager. Just imagine an adjustable multi-grip bar that could be built to perfectly suit anyone and everyone. Dream scenario swirled of quickly swapping handles to different positions, or maybe your choice of various knurlings or different handle diameters, removable sleeves, swapping components between frames. Just imagine what a company like Rogue could do with all this potential. Enter the Rogue MG-4C, the most customizable multi-grip bench bar out there. And with Rogue behind it, what could possibly go wrong? To be honest, after getting so hyped for this bar and its potential, I really started to hate it once I saw that high price tag, and then there was months of waiting and then production delays, and well, some of us in the home gym community fantasized about this bar. Actually, that doesn't sound right at all. We saw its potential and all the things it could be, so those expectations got loftier and loftier. So the real question of this review is, did Rogue create a product that lives up to the promises it never actually made? And if it doesn't, is it still worth that incredible price tag? Because I'm going to be honest with you right now, it has some flaws that could have and should have been easily resolved, and it's too damn expensive for what it is. And sure, some of my original expectations were a little unrealistic, but it was hard not to get caught up with it, as they teased a similar concept for their new prototype trap bar and shared so many glimpses of what this thing could be. And after spending a few weeks with it, I do really like it, but that's with some pretty big caveats. One, you have to accept it for what it is, and two, you have to wait a long enough time that you, and more importantly your wife, forget how expensive it is. So let's separate the hype and missed potential and talk about what this bar does and doesn't do well, because this is actually a pretty good bar. That is, if it fits your wants and needs. And anybody who's been watching the channel long enough knows that I'm pretty hard on Rogue, but I'm pretty hard... Why does everything I say sound like an innuendo? But I'm hard on everyone, and high prices breed high expectations. So are you ready to spend power rack prices on a barbell? Then have I got an item for you. And we're going to spend some time talking about the frame, handles, and sleeves, because Rogue took some unique approaches to this one and hit and missed on several aspects. Now the frame itself is finished in a matte black powder coat, which is really well applied, and the frame itself is about 41 inches long, but that's to where the sleeves insert into the collars. The actual frame is closer to 40 inches. It's 9 3/4 inches deep, with holes spaced 1 inch apart all the way out to 26 inches, and it's 51.5 inches from collar to collar. Which means it'll fit in both 49-inch racks, so 43-inch interior width, and 47-inch racks like a rep with a 41-inch interior, but it will be a tight fit. It's a pretty long frame, and because of that length, you'll have to be a little bit more careful how you line up your hands during bench, because that size can introduce a little bit more instability. And I really think overall it could have been made a little bit smaller, but I wonder if some of that's intentional so you'll stay in Rogue's ecosystem. They could have easily pulled in the length of this thing a half an inch or more, and if they didn't want to do that, why not include another set or two of holes so we have a little bit more space to work with? Or shrink down the footprint on the depth a little bit, or maybe use smaller tubing than this 1.5 inch 11 gauge that they're using. Because this is a thick bitch, and unlike the Arch Nemesis bar, which is a little underweight, this thing, depending how you have it set up, could potentially weigh more than a standard barbell. And if you're like me, I can't have people on the internet bullying me if in every single B-roll it doesn't look like I'm pushing at least 225. And while I normally enjoy a girl with a little bit of meat on her, and while I always thought I was pretty good at math, this thing really has me questioning things mid-workout as I'm sweating and trying to figure out how to calculate the 64-ish pounds this thing weighs as I currently have it set up. But overall, I've run this thing through a lot, and it's a well-balanced bar, so take that for what you will. And just to clarify that weight, it's 45 pounds for the short sleeve version with 1 pair of handles, whereas the longer sleeves, which is what I have, adds another 10 pounds. Making it 55 pounds, and each pair of additional handles is about 4 pounds. The welds are solid, if not the prettiest, but I prefer bubblegum cheeks, not bubblegum welds, and really this is the one area where the looks of the bar just don't keep up with everything else, because cosmetically, that stainless steel and matte black play really well off each other. But at this price, those welds are something people will harp on, even if it is an absolute tank. There's 25 sets of holes, which means you can put your hands wherever you want on it, and also means you can build it out to your individual wants and needs, which truth be told is the reason you'd get this bar. but the most elusive hole is that last one. It's also the one that probably most of us won't ever get to use. And it really begs the question, what is it for? It's dead center and has me wondering if Rogue has plans for a cable attachment or something that could go there, which again makes me think of all the things that this bar could be. The handles are a little bit interesting. If you're looking at this thing thinking, this is a pretty nice looking bar, you're right, it is, but these handles right here, they're actually extra money. So it's a multi-grip bar that doesn't actually come with multiple grips. And remember when I said you had to get over the price before? Well, Rogue is playing a little bit of the role of the good guy here because they actually make Kabuki look like a little bit of a bargain, which is honestly kind of an accomplishment. Because this bar, as I have it, cost me $650 shipped to my door, excluding tax, which is a lot of money for a specialty bar that most of us will use once a week, making it a really nice piece of wall art, and it almost has me waiting on Titan's version. But the Kabuki bar is $590 shipped to me. So the real question is this 10% more bar than that? Which, to be honest, would probably make for a pretty interesting comparison. So if that's something you want to see, let me know in the comments and we'll do a big showdown between Bell's, Rep, Kabuki, and whoever else's cambered bars I've got here. But I think if that's something we're gonna do, we should wait to see what comes of Rogue and Kabuki teaming up, as we've shown on our Instagram, with Rogue going to be manufacturing that Cadillac bar for them. Knurling. Speaking of Kabuki, I think a lot of people who are going to have issues with this bar is because we kind of saw it as the transformer bar of multi-grips, and this is probably where I have my biggest issues with it. It's not that you can't move the handles, you definitely can, but it's clunky and it takes a while since you're threading in and out the long bolts that hold them in place. Versus something like a pop pin, or I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I just play when at work. So versus a system that's safe and also quick. But to be honest, most of us are just going to set it and forget it.
I'll set it and that's it.
Never changing those positions, even if it was a quick system. But where I got caught up on this bar is that potential to build it out for both Winnie and I, because what's going to work for me is not going to work for her. So for example, with the Rep Cambered bar, that outside position is fine for me, but it's uncomfortable for Winnie. So she'll avoid using it, and I was really hoping this would be the one bar to rule them all. But I can get over that because even with this bar as is, I have more options than any other bar out there, and I can at least find an in-between for Winnie and I. But what I can't get over is the lack of included washers, which is a really cheap and easy addition. And without them, you're murdering the finish as you tighten that bolt down. Luckily, I had some black nylon washers laying around, so I put those on to avoid it. But what the heck, Rogue. So I do apologize to those Rogue fanboys in the comments that defend them like they own the company, and I really am rooting for Rogue, and I love American manufacturing. And I'll be completely honest with you, me telling you everything is great makes me a lot more money. So if you'd be so kind, use those affiliate links. And you know what? If not my affiliate links, use literally anyone's, because that's how these channels survive. All right, back on track. So when it comes to the sleeves, the handles, you've got a lot of options. Options? Straight, which are included in that $425 base price, 16 degrees and 20 degrees, and I got one of each. Because if you're buying this thing, you're probably trying to build it out like a Cadillac bar. Now, for finish options, you can choose between Rogue's proprietary black, which I have on the handles and sleeves, or the stainless steel, which costs another $10 per pair of handles, but another $120 or $185 if you choose it on the sleeves. But those additional handles are really where those prices start rocketing upward, but both finishes are really well done and highly durable. And regardless of which finish you choose, the shaft is always going to be stainless steel, and the hardware, handles, and sleeves are always going to match whichever finish you choose. Now, the handles themselves are 28.5 millimeters in diameter, and it's fine for me, but I know a lot of people are going to prefer 29 millimeters like on the Ohio Power Bar, or maybe something even higher. And for the money and the hopes of it being a bar that fits every person, I can see why you might dock at points there, but who's to say down the road we don't see more options for size and knurling? Or maybe that's just me getting caught up in its potential again. Speaking of the knurling, it's supposed to be like an Ohio bar, but I find it has a little bit more bite to it, and I think that's because Rogue's proprietary matte black finish changes the surface of the steel rather than applying a coating to it. And I really like the feel of it, but I could see people wanting something a little more aggressive if they were going to be doing a lot of rows with it. Rogue has included rotating Olympic sleeves, which are built like an Ohio bars, which is pretty much what these are, machine sleeves with bronze bushings, which isn't typical for this type of bar. For example, the Bell's Arch Nemesis bar requires axle collars as they're literally steel pipe welded in. And Rep Fitness's bar has Olympic-sized sleeves, but they don't rotate. So the sleeves on this thing are a few steps up in quality, which makes sense at this price, but you're not doing Olympic lifts with it, so I'm not sure how useful that rotation really is. And while the sleeves are technically removable, it's a friction fit with a tapered shaft that fits into the frame and gets pulled in when you tighten the bolt. So you'll need a mallet to pop them out, and while I'm no expert on pulling out, that's not quite the smooth system we were hoping for, which kills one of those ideas of being able to easily remove them to make it easier to use on a cable machine, for example, or to swap those sleeves between frames, like with the flat version of this bar. But I'm sure there's some safety concerns there, because imagine the backlash Rogue would face if this bolt were to come loose and the sleeve comes out, for example. Now, when it comes to the sleeve, there's two options for length. You have the 15.5-inch loadable sleeve length, which is what I have, and then there's the shorter 9-inch version, which I probably should have chosen because I don't really have any need for an extra length, and it would have saved me $70, and it's also probably a big sell for people who have smaller spaces. It's got a camber depth of about 3.5 inches, which allows for a greater range of motion, so you can work on that low-end pressing strength, but that depends where you place those handles. And as you can see, the final placement doesn't actually allow you to use that full depth, but for me personally, it gives me a good stretch, and I wouldn't want to go much deeper because I feel like it would be putting too much stress on my pec and my shoulders. Speaking of which, the reason you'd want a multi-grip bar is because those different grip options allow you to relieve some stress on your joints, as those angles and positions of the grips put you in a safer and more natural pressing position. And of course, with this bar, you can cater it to your own individual wants and needs, and I found that once I dialed in the positions to what I liked, I've really enjoyed using it. I think that an important aspect that a lot of people miss in a cambered bar is the very same thing that makes it almost useless for non-vertical movements. And that is that the camber creates more stability versus a flat multi-grip bar, because the center of mass sits lower than your hand placement, so it's always trying to balance itself. And if you've used a flat multi-grip bar, you know that a lot of your focus and effort goes into stabilizing that bar, which can be good if you're attempting to work those auxiliary muscles, but it hinders your ability to really load up on the weight. But try using a cambered bar for another exercise like curls, and every time you add weight, you're creating torque, which is going to put a lot of stress on those wrists. So I really wish companies, and this is not exclusive to Rogue, it's everybody, would stop selling people on ideas of skull crushers and every other kabuki pipe dream advertisement. To cut down on shipping costs, it requires a little bit of assembling, as the sleeves and handles have to be attached. But it's an incredibly simple process, and Rogue includes the necessary tools to do it, which is a nice touch. Because unless you're collecting Rogue wrenches like me, you probably don't have one that size, and the packaging on this thing is exceptional. This is by far the best packaging job I've ever seen on a bar like this. No excess foam that just sits in a landfill, nothing moving around, rubbing on stuff, just really well done and makes for a great first impression. Now, I know I've been critical on this thing, which I think is logical given its price point, but overall it's a very well done bar. But the real question is, does it provide enough value to warrant its purchase over popular options like Elite FTS's cambered grip bar, or Titan's multi-grip cambered bar, which is a oddly similar version, or really any of the options that we've reviewed here on this channel. I do really appreciate Rogue's attempt to innovate here, and I'm really still excited for its potential, even if I'm left wanting a little bit more from what really is the most customizable multi-grip bar out there. So is the idea of this bar, or at least the idea we all got when we first saw it, better than the execution? Yes and no. It's better than a lot of the options I have here, but I have to admit, this is the most American thing I own. Overbuilt, overpriced, and unnecessary. But as much as I want to hate it, I can't. I really enjoy using it, even given its flaws. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. It helps us in our pursuit of going full time. And if you're feeling generous, like and comment and do whatever else you're supposed to do. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.